Okay, so we're now up to this lesson on Spark DataFrames. So the main thing, about Spark DataFrames is that underneath they really are just our RDD. But still, let's get started with Spark DataFrames. We can mess around with them a little bit. So we start as we normally do by creating our Spark session. We are setting our app name to be films, I guess, and then we are getting or creating our Spark session. As we know, we can do this SC thing, then click on the Spark UI, and then from here we can see there's no jobs yet that have been performed. Now, to create a Spark data frame, there's a number of different ways we can create one. One is we can start with essentially just like a list of dictionaries in Python. So if you are retrieving data from an API, you can then, that normally comes in a list of dictionaries, you can then just feed that into a Spark data frame. And the way you can do that is with using our, this is normally called Spark or Spark session. Let's call this Spark actually. And then down here, we'll do Spark. And now this has a create data frame method on it. And we can pass through a list of dictionaries here. And so this will be our movies DF. And now, if I look at that, we can see it says, okay, this is our data frame. And if we want to actually view some of this information, you can call show, and that will display the data. All right. So the whole point of a Spark data frame is to give just an easier interface than directly working with an RDD. The data frame, this idea, it comes from Pandas. And Pandas is a library that a lot of data scientists are familiar with working with, and we actually have some curriculum on it if you want to get to know Pandas a little bit better. So this is one way to create a Spark data frame, is just from our list of dictionaries, then calling create data frame. You can of course read in data directly from a CSV. So here you can see I have some Houston claims data down in this folder, and then I'm just calling Spark read the format of CSV, Houston claims, and then header is true. And this was what we did really in the first lesson overall. And the same thing, you can do show. We can actually say just show maybe the first couple rows. You might remember this is kind of messy, so we can do vertical equals true. All right, so this is now showing me the first couple of rows. So we'll see a little bit more how to work with Spark data frames in the next lessons. But for right now, the main point is that underneath a Spark data frame is really an RDD. It's just a thin wrapper around an RDD. And you can get to the RDD by calling .rdd from that original data frame. And now if you want to, you can always, select those where the city is Houston. So if there's anything that you're not clear how to work with in a data frame, you can always go down to the RDD and then say, okay, well, let's go through each of the records here and select where the movie or where this claim has certain attributes. So for instance, if I just want to see this RDD, we'll just call collect to get started. And it looks a little bit different, but it's pretty similar. Let's see if we can filter. This is lambda row, where the row reported city equals Houston dot, and then we'll say dot take 1. I must have spelled it wrong. So dot take 1. Oh, it's all caps. So let's just do that again. Reported city is Houston. This is why I always like copying and pasting. And there we go. All right. So the point is, we can read in data into a data frame. The point of the data frame is to make it easier, but if we forget how to use certain functions in the data frame, or we just prefer to work with an RDD, we can do so. And the other point is that really this means that because a data frame is just a wrapper around an RDD, it works the same way that we think of an RDD working. So what does that mean? Well, one, it's distributed. So if we call moviesdf.rdd, get number of partitions, I guess we have 8 partitions here, and that would come from the fact that you see this local star, right? So it's using all the available cores right now because I didn't specify it to do differently. So any of these searches, right, is going to be performed or has the potential to be performed across those 8 partitions. The other thing to notice is that it's lazy. So the same attribute of an RDD not actually performing the work until we call the action, that same idea exists in our data frame as well. So for instance, if we say, let's say we have this claims DF, and then maybe we want to select the reported city column. So you can do .select, parentheses, reported city. If you press shift return, it's not actually performing the work, right? It's only going to perform that work when you call .show at the very end. Let's just show, I guess, 2. All right, so at that point, it performed the work. So again, that same kind of idea of transformation versus action exists inside of the data frame. And then the last thing to talk about is that we can only use coarse-grained operations. So the same capability of not being able to select an individual item and then operate on that propagates to our data frame, right? Any transformations, any selections we do, that's essentially doing some sort of filtering or mapping under the hood. So that's what you have to work with, right? When we do this, select here, I guess I'm doing select title and genre. Well, what is that doing? This is doing a map under the hood, right? On the data frame on the RDD. So that's the main thing to know about data frames is, we saw quickly how to create a data frame, but the main point is that those same principles that we saw with RDDs, they apply. Our data frames are distributed across a number of partitions. Our data frames are lazy in the sense that they divide up this idea of transformations and actions, and a job is only executed when you call a specific action. And then we also saw that really they're only performing these coarse-grained operations. So under the hood, right, you should be able to maybe translate how this is working. And in fact, if you want to see it, we should go probably to our jobs and then click. And from here, maybe now it makes a little bit more sense if we look at the stages. Now let's click on this. Okay, and then you look at the Diag Visualization, you can see the steps that are being applied. Okay, so like we said, this was a map, right? And that's what we're seeing, is it's reading in the collection and then it's performing these map partitions.